Hey everybody, welcome to the Purpose People podcast. We have got Leo from Core3, so welcome.
Hello.
Good to get you in front of the camera and on our podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So Leo, we want to tell a little bit about a story because you're in an industry that notoriously has got a bit of a bad reputation.
Yeah.
You know, we talk about estate agents and then there's recruitment.
Yeah.
So what makes you different and why get into this career out of all things?
Well, I think first of all, I agree. The sector does have a bad name, but it is filled with some really great people.
Yeah.
And I think I'd like to think it's the minority that let the side down, and you know that it's an industry which often is putting profit before people when it actually should be the other way around. You know, recruitment should be a business of people for people.
Yeah.
And fundamentally, that's the way that I've always looked at it. And what makes me different, I guess, I think from my side, it's that intrinsic value base that I follow, that, you know, I've been raised on. And I wouldn't say that the values that I have are completely unique. You know, I think it's a lot of humans have the same values.
Yeah, yeah.
So I wouldn't say I'm incredibly different to most, but I just think that you should just do right by other people and aim to, with every impression that you make, improve someone's life if you can.
But I think you have to make a conscious decision in an industry that is notoriously that way to be different. And I think that your industry that you're in sometimes can pull you into what the mainstream is. So yeah. I use my example coming as an art director in sort of like advertising and that world. It was about money. It was about driving sales and products and stuff like that. And very quickly you don't see it immediately, but you see it over time, that values drift.
Definitely.
You know, and I think what happened to me is it wasn't until someone said there's got to be more to life than this. Where I had that conversation, I realized just how far my value set had drifted. And then for me, I got to the point where it had to be a hard reset.
Yeah.
It literally had to mean me walking away in order to find and reconnect with those values and then make that promise to myself that I ain't going down that route ever again. And for me, it was a case of owning the company, being given 25%, where I really questioned it. I'm going, okay, it's all right working in it, but when you own it, now you're responsible. And that was kind of where I come out of it. And I think what's interesting for you is now you obviously got your own business and you've started from the get-go saying, hey, we are not going to be like anyone else. But recruitment runs in your blood, doesn't it?
That's right, yeah. So my mum had her own recruitment business for 40 years.
Wow.
And I guess what you said just there does resonate in that, you know, I worked in recruitment for big globally listed organizations for over 10 years. And you just get used to a way of working, and they were both great organizations, and, you know, I wouldn't have a bad thing to say about them. But they're listed companies, so they naturally and have to have a duty to their shareholders. And, you know, rightly or wrongly, the focus becomes very much on profit and that sort of short-term, quarter-on-quarter, month-on-month mindset. Yeah. And you start, the longer you're in that sort of environment, the longer you start to play a role, I guess, and start to, you know, become part of that machine and that way of working. And I always felt there's part of me that perhaps could give more, and I looked up to my mum hugely. She raised me as a single mum, and she's always done so much for her local community with her business. Lots of volunteering, lots of charity work. She's won all sorts of accolades for the great things she's done with, you know, Businesswoman of the Year. She's Deputy Lieutenant for the Queen's Awards, now King's Awards. And she's now the High Sheriff of Worcestershire. And she's focusing on really making a difference to the youth of her community. So I guess that's what I've had as my North Star, and she's ingrained a lot of my values in me. So then when it came to the point when finally I found the bravery to start my own business, I took a lot of reflection and a lot of thinking about, okay, what are my intrinsic values that are really important to me? Because if I don't start this business from a place of authenticity, then I might as well not start. And I was quite fortunate in that I could have probably 6 months before I pulled the trigger to really think about what they were and who I was and what my story was, and therefore then what are the values that should exist in that business. And really the values that are in Core3 are my personal values, and they're things that I really believe in. So then when we're operating as an organisation, it's genuine, and we talk about them all the time. And if decisions are made that aren't aligned with that, then we act on them, and we reward, when behaviour that is in line with our values, and they're very sort of ingrained in our day-to-day behaviours. As well as then hardwiring our purpose, which is to make a difference to our local community, to sort of pioneer that conscious recruitment mindset. And for us, the way that we hardwired social impact into our business model is by committing 3% of revenue to our local community and to the environment. The reason why we did that was because it holds us accountable. We don't have to make a profit to make a difference. So every single placement, 3% of that goes back to one of our chosen 3 impact partners in Bristol. And it's nice because it's measurable. It gives you so much more tangible fulfillment every day because you can feel it with every placement. And it's evidence that you are what you say. And I think so often you'll see values stuck on a wall, and that's just about as deep as they go. And it's essentially the key there. What you said is values are behaviours, and so living up to those behaviours or demonstrating those behaviours sets you apart from the other type of companies that are out there. Because what I've seen is, and a bit like estate agents in a way, the sector tries to clean themselves up, but it's just like a broad brush stroke, new website, and that's just about it. But the same traits are there, and so on and so forth. But you've made some key decisions within your setup of your business that say, well, we can't be anything else because that's who we are, which is refreshing. With that, do you find it easier now you're clear on your values to attract sort of like light-hearted people? In terms of they fit your heart values as opposed to fit a box. You almost see yourself in them in a way. Is that what you've experienced? Yeah, and I've probably led with my heart rather than my head more often than I should have done in the early years. And I think it's very easy to interview somebody and you get on and they're like you, and their values are aligned and they're good human beings. But then you get them into the role, and recruitment's not an easy job. No. So it's highly demanding. The pressure comes not from us because we're not, a KPI-driven business. But if you really care about the job that you do, then the pressure comes from not letting your clients down or not letting your candidates down. So then you have to work longer hours. You have to, come into work before normal 9 to 5 people do to catch your candidates, and equally catch them after their usual working hours. So it does come with longer hours usually. We try to combat that with hybrid working, flexible working, everything else, but fundamentally recruitment is going to be a hard job compared to most of the career choices. So I think what we've tried to do in our interview process is combine that values-led approach with also, that grit, determination, resilience. You've got to have quite a competitive edge as well, I would say, in recruitment, because it's something that's got to get you out of bed to really want to be the best in the industry. And then the underlying sort of purpose behind it then is what keeps people there longer if they really believe in it. So I think that, what we found with our consultants is a lot of them come on board and they say, it doesn't really feel like recruitment. Which is good, Which is good because it doesn't have that sort of cutthroat feel. It's not that boiler room environment that can exist in recruitment. So the culture is something we've really, really worked on to make sure that once we get the right people in, then they stay, and they're happy and everything else. So yeah, it's been a journey, and we're still learning, and we're still, we're certainly not perfect, but we're on our way.
No, and I think one of the big achievements that you've just recently achieved is that of a B-Corp.
Yeah.
So do you want to just explain a little bit to the audience that don't know what a B-Corp actually is, just to give them a bit of an insight of why that's such a big milestone for yourself?
Yeah, so for us, when I was looking at, okay, what foundations am I going to build the business on? Firstly, I started with my own values, and then I looked at, okay, so what exists in the business world that aligns with those values?
Yeah.
So I got reading up on the concept of conscious capitalism, which is a move away from traditional capitalism, which just focuses on profit, and then moving towards that multiple stakeholder model, where it's not just your shareholders, but it's also your customers, it's also your community, it's the environment, it's your suppliers, it's your employees. It's looking at everything holistically and having an equal responsibility to each of those.
Yeah.
So then when I read up on, okay, how do you implement that into the business? That's when I found B-Corp as a really good process to follow that will help you implement all of those things into your business and make it authentic and hold you accountable and give you the tools and the processes to do it. So basically what it is, and Andy Hawkins puts it perfectly, is B-Corp to business is like what fair trade is to a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
It's really easy to see if a business has the B-Corp badge, then they've gone through a rigorous process. They've been audited on their commitment to their community and the environment and the quality of the service that they deliver, how they look after their staff, their the culture, the benefits. So it's a good all-round picture of a business that is generally a force for good, and is trying to do something a little bit more than just make a quick buck.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because my journey of finding out about B-Corp was that being in the media industry, there's a lot of bad practice, like using models and that sort of stuff. There's a certain duty of care that you should have, like if you're doing a photo shoot or whatever else. And having been in the industry for so long, you just saw what was not great and what should be better. And so I came up with this thing called the Ethical Media Network. And I was like, oh, this would be, you have this little badge, and it was the same process. And it was like, okay, I've come up with a concept, I've got the logo, and it was just like to roll that out. How would I do that? And in the midst of that process, I then stumbled across B-Corp.
Yeah.
And what I find quite interesting is that, there's a lot of people looking for it, but don't know what it is that they're looking for, that it is actually B-Corp. But what I'm really pleased about, having seen the outworking of COVID and people asking deeper questions now, you can see the growth of the number of businesses that are going down that B-Corp route because they want to do business for the right reasons. So
yeah.
In the midst of a really tough, trying time for a lot of people, I think that's one of the positives that's come out of COVID, where people have said, I want to do business the right way. I don't just want to do business for business's sake.
Hugely. I think that period of time for everyone, whether you were working through it or you were on furlough, a lot of people spent a lot of time looking at the four walls around them.
Yeah.
And that gave a lot of time for reflection and thinking inwardly about, okay, what am I doing with my life?
Yeah.
And we've seen, even in the recruitment sector, we've seen a real mindset shift from candidates coming to us. And, probably they come to us as well because they see that we're a B Corp and that we're purpose-led. But I've definitely seen an uptick of people that want more, that say, Leo, do you know any businesses in the local area that are B Corp or really do good for their community? I'd love to hear about them. As soon as you get a job in one of those businesses, please pick up the phone.
Wow.
And equally the same when it comes to talent attraction for Core3. As a B Corp business, it's a real signal to the market, and more and more people are waking up to it. And as long as it's backed up with authenticity, then it can be a really powerful thing. But it's still only 0.01% of businesses that are B Corp in the UK.
And I think, no matter how much progress you think we made, there's a lot more to make. We've been asked, I won't name them or whatever, but we were asked by a supplier who were mainly based in the construction industry. So they sent their procurement forms, and they're literally long, and it's all about everything to do with construction. And what was great in filling it out was, no, we don't do this because it's probably irrelevant to our role within the construction industry, because we were looking to do three-dimensional stuff. Mm-hmm. And I could keep putting in, but we are a B Corp. So when they know what B Corp is, it's like, oh, have you got ISO, whatever else? No, that's irrelevant to us, but we are a B Corp.
Yeah.
So it's just a good tool to have to say, look, when I say that says a lot. It answers a lot of questions because of the rigorous process that you have to go through to get there. Mm-hmm. So for me, I think, businesses that are looking to demonstrate that they are purpose-driven, one of the first things they need to do is embrace that journey, embrace that route to become a B Corp. But it's still emergent, it's still new, and it's not uncommon now for estate agents and recruitment wanting to go down that route, because they've realised actually if they want to be taken seriously and if they want to get new talent on board, they've got to be more than just money at the end of the day. So it's a good way of resetting an industry and the sector.
Well, even just having a go on the impact assessment online, it's the B Corp impact assessment is completely free.
Yeah.
To use. It's like 250 odd questions.
That's right.
That you fill out, and then it gives you the score, and it's almost like standing on the scales and seeing how you weigh in initially. And I think the average UK business is 50.9 points, something like that. To be a B Corp, you've got to be 80 points or above.
Yeah.
So just at least shine a light on where the gaps are, and what can we implement, even if you don't intend on going all the way through it and doing the audit and implementing everything. It can just give you an idea of how do I make my business better.
Yeah,
and for us, it was amazing to do it right from the beginning, because as a startup, we got a blank sheet of paper. So then, having gone through that before I'd even started trading, I knew everything that I implement now, I can make it in line with the B Corp guidelines and implement things that are future proof. And it really made us mature and grow up a lot quicker than most startups would.
Yeah,
and, even in the first 12 months, we had a full employee handbook, we had policies for everything, governance, we had our legal frameworks set up in the right way, customer feedback loops, how we're looking after our employees, the benefits, the holidays, the maternity, paternity policies, breastfeeding policies, shared parental leave. Everything was really well thought through, but I wouldn't have even thought of those things if I hadn't have gone through that survey in the first place.
And that's the great thing, is it, one of the things that I was told early on by Andy, he said, you're never going to get to 200. As it like the score's out of 200, you're never going to get 200 or 198. You're going to be some distance from it. But what's good about it is you can keep improving your score over time and refining, because businesses changes so quickly. And the organisation that we had it whereby all our staff lived within 5-10 minutes of where our office was at the start of the process. But by the time we come out of the pandemic, we'd all moved away.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so I'm driving an hour my way. Someone else is doing 45 minutes. So all the sort of like environmental stuff that we talked about, it's like, hang on a minute, we're all training in this, that and the other. So then it was, in light of B Corp, it was easier for us to go, well, if that is the case, and only a couple of people are coming into the office, actually makes more sense to go remote, because that's more in line with the environmental policies than actually beating everyone over and say, you've got to be in the office 5 days a week and drive across Bristol.
Yeah.
So it does help as a decision-making tool as well. That like, if you look at what you've committed to and reevaluate, you go, well, that might not work. So like my process now is we're looking for like a barn space where can build it out as a studio where it is central to the majority of the staff. So there's a train station that way. Farmer that we know we've already been talking to. So again, when you make that as your guiding star, it's amazing how things begin to work and opportunities begin to present themselves. Because for us now, having an office in South Bristol where we were, it just doesn't work. You know, it's going to take someone an hour and a half at least to get to the destination, you know.
Yeah, bit of a mission.
Yeah. So when we talk about Core3 in recruitment and the reputation that it has and it carries, how do you attract the right type of people for the role? How do you attract candidates, you know, that you go, I know that's going to be a really good candidate for this particular business?
I think it comes with experience. I think fundamentally a good recruiter will have quite a high EQ, quite good emotional intelligence, can sort of really get to understand what makes people tick quite well.
Yeah.
And then can match, you know, personalities and cultures together, and immediately know, oh, they'd be great for that business. I think quite a lot of that is fairly natural, innate ability in some people and not in others. Yeah. And that's what we're quite big on, that in the cultural fit or personality fit, whatever you want to call it. Especially in the world of finance and accounting, it's not just about the technical skills or what's on their CV. It's much more than that. In fact, I'd say it's, you know, the technical skills is probably less than 50% of the requirement usually. So we have to meet every single candidate. We have to meet every single client before we work on the job, because otherwise, you know, you're just working in the dark. So I think there's that innate EQ element to it, but then I think it comes with experience of learning. Okay, so when it comes to the skill set side of things, which is still, you know, important, is then understanding, okay, what type of skills could match that requirement. And it's not just looking at job titles, it's really sort of understanding the next level down of, well, you know, a finance analyst could do a finance business partner job, for example. There are lots of different crossovers, or how can someone transition from the technical side to the commercial side, and what's the route and path people can take. So I think that comes with a bit of time, and then understanding the industries and sectors, and, you know, how people can move from one to another, and how business models can have synergy, because I think that's important as well in finance. Is you know, if you think about how you account for making bottles of shampoo on a production line versus providing renewable energy to hundreds of thousands of customers, it's completely different how you run your transactions through a business. It's completely different how you generate revenue. You know, one might be B2B wholesale, one might be B2C. It's, you know, you've got to understand that business world as well, which I love. That's one thing, I guess, that's really kept me in it. Is I love the sort of business side and understanding. It's
changed a lot, though, isn't it? You know, like for instance, in the world of accounting, for example, just the fact that cloud's come on board. You know, so for example, it's quite a relatively new thing for accountants and financial departments to go to the cloud, like within the last 10 years. You know, but other technologies or other companies have been doing cloud for much longer. You know, and what I've seen is that finance has become quite techy as well. You know, there's a lot of tech startups in that world. There's a lot of disruptors. There's new tools, new tech. You know, just anything from getting receipts to, you know, just reconciling the transactions. It's fundamentally changed. So it's quite a, you know, we've got the term now fintech. It's quite a exciting and vibrant place, I would say, than it was when I was younger, which seemed like, you know, white guy with a grey suit and he just sat behind a desk going no to everybody. You know?
I think it's evolved in a few different ways. I think the traditional bean counter sort of stereotype was perhaps what it used to be, where you had manual ledgers and you had books and you were writing your accounts on a monthly basis. But the first major shift that we saw was moving from, you know, counting the beans to then explaining the meaning behind the beans and having that interpersonal skill set. And this is where, when I talk about that personality fit and that ability to, communicate and how to manage stakeholders and how to influence and have that level of gravitas. That's becoming more and more important, the softer skills.
Yes.
Because they have to speak to an MD or speak to a marketing director or a sales director and influence them on, why they're not making as much money as they were last month, or why they should do this buy one get one free offer that they did this time last year. Understanding trends, looking, analysing the data, and then turning it into something meaningful.
Yeah.
So there's that side, and then rightly so, from what you said around the tech side, accountants are having to become more and more astute when it comes to systems. Because as soon as things moved into the cloud, then the evolution of system change and automation and AI has evolved, and it is still evolving, especially with AI now. Every week there's something new coming out, and ChatGPT now can analyze reams of spreadsheets and kick out pie charts and analyze things for you. So
it's like forecasting. You can just say, give me a financial forecast model for the next 5 years. This is the unit price, this whatever.
Exactly.
Bang. And all of a sudden the creative or whoever it is who's not in that world can go, okay, I've got a bit of an idea here, and they're going to the accountant. Can you do something like this for me, please? And they're like, where'd you get that from? So that's what I really enjoy. And I think for me, what I like about the finance industry now, and the biggest shift I've seen, is there's this change to actually undergirding and supporting entrepreneurship and vision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Whereas before it was almost like they were almost diametrically opposed. It was always the finance department that wasn't supporting the vision of, and it's often because they didn't really, they want to go and have 4 offices, but they're going, but you've got 4 lots of rent and 4 lots of rates and 4 lots of electricity. You're working together, not against. But I think now with a lot of the tech and a lot of the tools, I think maybe you talked about EQ as well, in the fact that even in the finance industry, there's that empathy now with entrepreneurs. So, well, how do we get you to where you need to get to?
Definitely.
And how is it sustainable? And that's often the question. Not, can we not do it? It's like, no, we want to do it. We want to do it sustainably. And these are the things that you need to be aware of in doing it. So I think that's the biggest shift I've seen within the finance side of things.
And I think what's quite exciting to me, and the reason why I started the Conscious Finance podcast, is the route that profession is moving in when it comes to looking at social and environmental impact. Yeah. So again, going back to the traditional route of the bottom line, which accountants are well positioned to measure, there's now business moving towards the concept of the triple bottom line. The people, planet, and profit is obviously part of it, but looking at, I remember I had a conversation with John Collins, who's a CFO of Vivo Barefoot, which is a B-Corp footwear brand, and before that he was at Pucker, the tea company, B-Corp, and he put it really nicely. He said, well, accountants have always had a respected seat at the table. The finance director, CFO, sits on the board. They are well positioned in terms of skill set to act as that scorecard for a business. That ability to track, measure, report. So naturally, when it comes to measuring impact, of all the departments in a business, they're really well positioned to do that. And I think then if you look at things like the changes with the IFRS regulations that are coming through in accountancy standards, where businesses will have to report on their carbon emissions, carbon footprint, and many more things when it comes to their social environmental responsibilities, that's again going to fall to the finance team. So it's quite exciting to see how that's evolving with not just AI, not just that EQ, personality, interpersonal side of things, but also that sort of ESG agenda.
Well, I think it's because they're data driven. The pure thing is that pure data is knowing your numbers, but the numbers now represent a lot of different things. So it's not just about units, and it's just not about profit. It's about impact and miles. And we're working with a company at the moment where we're building a calculator that shows you how much an event like per event affects the environment.
Oh, wow.
So basically what they do is you put in all the information. So say, for instance, you decide you're going to do a conference in Manchester. They will literally put all the and they say, look, that's what it's going to cost. Based on all your information, Manchester might not be the best place to do it. If you did it, say, in Exeter, more of your staff live there, so it's less to travel. So they can consult on the basis of that. So that stuff's exciting, but again, it's all about showing them the cost. So for example, where they can save money is if they're doing a conference, most people would print a banner out and it had the year of the conference on it. They would go, take the year off, because now you can use it for 2 or 3 years, the same stuff.
Yeah.
And it's just little tweaks like that that can make a big difference. And so one of the verticals that they're going after, they've set this for events for corporates, for example, is going to go after the festivals. Where the festivals just have completely different themes each year, is to say, well, have an overarching name and theme, and then maybe change the themes on the digital screens rather than on the main stuff. So again, keeps the cost down and brings it all the way down. Food waste, for example.
Huge.
So we had a bit of fun with the food waste, because the initial calculations, they were given too much food per portion, and they worked out if we go in at this kind of portion, there's going to be loads of waste because no one can eat all this food. So they had to recalculate that, but none of that information existed, and that was part of their journey, is to go and find the information to then go back and say, if you've got 100 delegates, the chances are you're going to have this much food waste. And so they become an authority in that space. But again, it's all data driven. Decisions now being made by data. Yes, finance comes into it, but also the carbon footprint, the wastage in food and the tonnage and that sort of stuff, CO2. So it's like the principles of a financial director are now filtering its way into making better business, which is great. That's what I'm enjoying about it. In terms of just seeing that whole industry shape and change, and the correlation between, as you said, ESG, correlation to being profitable, correlation to retention, all these things are starting to work together rather than against each other.
Yeah, and tech and data is becoming an enabler for this sort of thing. So we use Ecology Zero for our carbon accounting. Yeah. Really clever bit of kit. We use Ecology is one of our impact partners for our environmental pillar. Yeah. Anyway, so we invest in carbon reduction projects with them, as well as tree planting and the usual stuff. But then they have Ecology Zero, which links with your accounting software and it analyzes all your spend. Wow. So it analyzes where we're spending our money. And then they've got a team of carbon accountants who've sort of inputted data into what each cost type should have in terms of a CO2 emission. Yeah. So now we've got a much more accurate picture of our carbon emissions and how much we're using for scope 1, scope 2, etc. Yeah. And then it gives us much more ideas. Okay, so these are the areas where we can improve. This is the low-hanging fruit. These are things that we can do quite easily overnight. These are things that will take a bit more time on our road to net zero. Without that, as a small business, we'd have no chance. Exactly, and that's what I'm enjoying about tech. Yeah, because obviously we've got marketing agency, but with the software guys, we're getting more and more requests. So we built a load of carbon footprint calculators, which is probably one of the most robust and detailed carbon footprint. It's like literally a guy been in the industry 25 years. He'd made a solar powered yacht, many years ago. So and then all his amazing brain, he's like a mad professor. And then he's got a guy that does all the Excel spreadsheets. And then me and Andrews, who was working with us in digital, basically we had to extrapolate the information and put it into tools. So within, I think it's Devon, they've got probably one of the most sophisticated carbon footprint calculators that the council roll out to get data back. Because it's got years worth of study, and we built essentially the journey that they went on, which is great. Oh, cool. Another one that we did, which is interesting, talking about figures, was a tax calculator that we built on behalf of someone else, which the government were using to determine how they were going to get their money back from all the spend from COVID. Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. That's interesting. So you literally... I've always wondered that, actually. Yeah. So you literally sit there and go, well, if I tax the poor, how long is it going to take me? And if I tax the rich, how long is it going to take? Now, obviously, the richer, the more you tax them, the more money comes through into the rest of the ecosystem. But then you've got a load of upset rich people, So what they did is they had the financial models of how they were going to get and affect the households to get the bounce back money back and all this sort of stuff.
and built that. So again, data really does play a massive key now in a lot of our decision making that maybe 10, 15 years ago seemed to be too hard to do because it's all like pens and paper and Excel spreadsheets or whatever. Whereas now it's like click at a button, you can do modeling. Yeah. If we did this, click. Ooh. And if we did this, click. And you can actually see it in real time, which is quite clever stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Love a bit of tech.
So in terms of what your business, Core3, and where it's at, how do you stay on top of being that new voice in the marketplace, as in, you know, educating all your clients that come on board, but also being that standard bearer? How do you stay on top of that? You know, not reverting back to everybody else, because I think it's good when you're small, but it's when you're at scale is where things begin to.
Yeah, so I think it comes back to the values again. Obviously, we've got the purpose and the hardwired 3%, which we've made that commitment. There's no moving away from that. That's there forever. So our goal is by our year 5 trading, which is 3 years' time, that we'll be giving 100,000 every year back to our local community. We've given 42,000 so far since we launched 20 months ago. And we volunteer and give back, 6 days per employee per year. So that's another commitment that we won't falter on. But then the values are the things that align throughout the business. So, and we've been exploring ways of how do we ingrain those to make them more than words written on a wall. And we're not there yet. It's an evolution, but things like how we interview, behavioural based, values based interviews in line with our 5 values. Our leadership development program is based on behaviours and values alongside performance. So they have that sort of 360 feedback based on their behaviours around our values, and then a development plan off the back of that so that before they get to a manager or a leader in this business, we make sure that they have got the right values for us. Because I think if you make sure that the leadership team have the right values, then the trickle down as you scale will happen, hopefully. If you're making sure that the interview process is right, then your intake should be as good as it can be. People can often let you down. You can't be perfect all the time, but that's another thing that we're doing. We have our values awards every quarter. So again, we recognise performance and behaviours that really go beyond our values. So that's again in the team's hearts and minds all the time. So there's a few other things, but we're continuously looking for ways of how do we ingrain that. And then when we look externally, when we're making decisions to our customers or on behalf of our customers, they're our guiding light. So if we have to make a decision that is on the fence, so we look to our values and think, right, okay, do they align? If they don't, then we don't do it. Yeah.
And I think that for me is the value stuff is values make you valuable. And so the more you stick to them, the more people recognize it as who you are. And the more people remember you and, almost feed you clients, bring you people and say, hey, I think you'll be a good fit is often the opening conversation. And then you have a conversation. We'll be a good fit, and then you connect and you can carry on and grow businesses together because, I think there are loads of suppliers out there, but how do you know you got the right one? And often if you carry the same values, it's always a good way of connecting you together, So it's funny whenever you get like the B-Corp badge, you get contacted by other B-Corps, and the cynic in you is like, you just because I got a badge, you think we could do business. But there is that element of, it's not about business, it's like going, well, let's keep it in the family. We're both aligned on values. Surely we could do some good stuff together. And I think that's more the motivation rather than the cynical side of things. And that's what's great about the community, and it's great about it growing and other businesses coming on board. But even now, as you said, a lot of people don't know what it is. They have literally no clue what a B Corp is.
No, I think it's something we try to bang the drum on quite a lot because we're really trying to inspire change in not just our community, but in the business world and the recruitment sector as a whole, and try to sort of move the needle on how business can be better, because something's got to change. Like the capitalism model that has existed for the last however many decades is broken. Look at our world; it's knackered. That we are draining its resources, we are destroying the climate, people are suffering, there's too much of a gap between the rich and the poor. Inequality is at one of the worst it's been. So there has to be a change in terms of that. And then I had a really good conversation with Rick Sturge, who is, I met him at the Blue Earth Summit actually, and he's a CFO, but we which really well aligned in terms of our values, and he thinks of things in such a macro level in terms of how, because before, rightly or wrongly, busyness gets the better of us, and you can very, very quickly start to think like 1 meter in front of you. Especially as a startup founder, when you are HR, IT, marketing, legal. You're the L&D team. You're tech support. So you've got to wear so many hats. And you're trying to build a brand from nothing. It's really difficult to think bigger picture. All the time. And I think we're just getting to that point now where we're really starting to think, okay, so how can we inspire change on a macro level where we can rally, the business community to think differently. To educate them on things like B-Corp if they're not already aware, or just to share ideas, because again, we're desperate to learn more and get better every day, and be inspired by others as well. It's a two-way street. So we're developing those communities, and the Purpose Party actually, which we're hosting on Thursday of this week, is a bit of a celebration of that, to try to sort of bring that community together, and then create almost an inner circle of people that we can invite to future events, podcasts, our blog, have speaking opportunities, roundtables, workshops. How can we work together? Because if we work together, we're going to make bigger change faster, rather than just working.
And that's what I like about what you're doing is that there is an industry, there is a sector, and you're taking responsibility for it as well. They're saying we're not just going to make our money out of it. What we're going to do is going to help reshape it and reframe it. And that's working with a lot of clients just as much as it is working with candidates and educating them what is possible. And I think that's businesses that shape a sector have an authority that they carry, and they don't carry it because they know all the answers. They're just asking all the right questions and then go looking for the answers. It's interesting. I remember doing the sort of like the journey that we did with B-Corp, and one of the key things we found is that we do this thing called the Purpose Playbook, and that actually made a big score for us, because it said that, how are you educating like other businesses about being more purposeful? It was like, well, funny enough, we got this thing that does that. Man, that's got loads of points. Now, we didn't do it because of the points. We were already doing it, but we realized how impactful it was. And, I've been talking to some people where if they want to work with corporates, for example, that even just having sustainable development goals on their website means that they might get a conversation, but the corporates aren't telling them that. So I know a big company, famous, I'm not going to name and shame them, literally went through their entire suppliers list, and if there were no sustainable development goals on their website, they were just deleted.
Wow.
They were gone.
Better put some on our website then.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, we have them, but we haven't got them on the website.
To get on the website.
Hopefully the B-Corp would be enough, but yeah.
Yeah, so because B-Corp's part, because that is part of the B-Corp journey, but the point of it is that the first way big business is fixing their problem is saying, we're going down the sustainable development route, which is great, having a couple of goals or whatever, but they're almost deflecting them fixing themselves, going, we're cleaning our supply list up first. So it buys them a bit of time, but it was just educating some of our clients on that and saying, well, because good health and well-being. What does that look like for you? And there's like, well, I don't know. I was like, okay, well, what could it look like? And then that's why 4-day work week and these sort of things, or remote working, for example, can actually make your business more attractive to new talent coming through. And it's those sorts of things that shape the sector. You know, I remember when we first did the 4-day work week, people were like, well, you can't do that as a creative. What do you mean? You've got to work 18 hours a day. And we're like, no, we don't have to. But that's what everyone does, isn't it? And it was like, yeah, what about if someone wants to work on a Friday? I was like, you're talking about the creative industry that normally check off at midday on a Friday. You know, they're down the pub or whatever else. And so it was just doing those things that sort of like got people questioning it and going, oh, okay. But that's the way we've always done it. And it's like, well, no, it doesn't have to be that way. So we saw that as, well, what happens if they can't get hold of you on a Friday? I said, well, if you educate your clients, chances are they don't want to be doing stuff on a Friday. You know, yeah, they might be getting some tasks done, but they don't want loads of big meetings on a Friday afternoon.
No.
You know, they're winding down and thinking about the weekend. So it's just us. If you understand the industry, you can reshape it by saying, well, what about this? What about that? You know, and even where he said, oh, it doesn't work in manufacturing, you say, well, why don't you have some of the workforce that have Mondays off and some of the workforce that have Fridays off? Because they're not necessarily your most productive days. You know, and there's been some seismic shifts in working practices. Like for London, have you ever been to London on a Monday and Friday now? It's dead.
Recently.
It's just dead.
Is it?
It's just dead.
Yeah.
No one comes in. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is when everyone's in London. Monday and Friday, people don't travel. They work from home.
Wow.
You know, so you see all these huge skyscrapers that have been built, office blocks, and they're all hybrid now because people won't travel. You know, in the same way that they used to. Like, you know, get on the tube every single day, an hour in, and they don't do it. It's like, well, no, I'll come in and work with the staff 2 times a week, 3 times a week.
Yeah.
Big
I think
shift.
there's been, I think the appetite is there for more systemic change.
Yeah.
But there's still a lot of work to do, especially in the recruitment sector. I think it's probably similar to a law firm in a way where, you know, it's, or other sectors that are highly competitive. You could probably say the same about marketing and media agencies. It's working together. There's that sort of us versus them mentality.
Yeah.
And why would I speak to a competitor about, you know, their ESG agenda? You know, they're a competitor. Why would I give them any of my secrets? You know, I think there needs a lot of work on that in terms of like, how do we work together? Because for an example, you know, if you created almost a group of organizations within the same sector that decided to share their supply chain, like suddenly, like being more environmentally conscious is expensive, right? It can be.
Yeah.
So when we're buying recycled products or organic cotton T-shirts or, you know, ethically printed leaflets, whatever it might be, it costs more. So why not group together, and then suddenly we've got economies of scale. So we can have better pricing if we order more, if we sort of you know, use that power in numbers to not just increase our impact, but also save some money along the way. There's benefits to it, but I think there's just a lot of closed-mindedness, that silo mentality that still exists.
Yeah, I think a lot's to do with generations. So the different generations, from baby boomer and veterans to Gen X, Gen Y and millennials, they think very differently. And I think what I'm finding is that the millennials are blaming the boomers for everything that's wrong with the world. And the boomers have got no time for it. They just got to get the job done.
The boomers just think they're lazy.
Exactly. You know, and doing a little bit of generational psychology and explaining it, and it's like, say, well, baby boomer sees a deadline as a deadline, as in, if you don't get over the line, you're dead. Whereas like with a millennial, the thing is that it's a suggestion. That's how they interpret it. So you need it done on Wednesday, but I might get it done Wednesday. You know, Wednesday could come and go. But it's getting everyone to see that if all the generations, because we're living longer, so they're all working together at the same time. And if someone who is older thinks forward and says, well, if I'm now about building a legacy, I need these people. because chances are I'm not going to be on the front line all the time. I might end up taking a back seat. So I need to get into that. And particularly with younger people, collaboration is more important. And so you'll get maybe an older Gen X or a baby boomer would go, well, I don't want to give all my secrets away because that's a secret sauce. Whereas millennials and maybe younger Gen Xs are like, well, give as much value as possible. Because here's the thing, if you know your sector and you think you can keep giving value away all the time, because often they like the value, but they're not going to go they haven't got time to do it. So if you give loads of value, eventually they go, well, can you help me do that then? Because I ain't got time. And that's the big sort of like miss where they're getting it, is that they think that if I give all this away, they're going to take away and run it with themselves. No, if you give it away, they're going to go, oh, okay, could you do that for me? And that's the fear factor where, yeah, give away your secrets, but because they're not going to be, they know of them, but they're not going to do it themselves. Chances are they're going to ask you to do it. And I think that's the fear between the generations, is that they go, oh, if I give it away, it's all my secrets. But the reality is, if I find out how much value you offer, I'm actually going to want you to do it for me. And vice versa with millennials, is the fact is that all those years of experience that you haven't got, find out the decisions and things that they made. So if you are a young entrepreneur, get yourself around older people that can tell you they've been through recessions. They've been through this world that we find ourselves in, cost of living crisis 20, 30 years ago. How did you survive that? And I think when you look at the finance industry, the best investors talk about things in 100 years. They don't think about the 10 years. So if you map it out 100 years, rise, crash, rise, crash, right? So they know there's a pattern. So rather than just panic and sell all your shares, they don't know, hold on to them.
That cumulative effect that they talk about. Yeah,
exactly. And it's like all of a sudden someone who's been around the block for 20, 30 years, they can give you advice that someone in the short term would never see. And so that's why the big change I want to see is that rather than compete with generations, compete with one another and begin to see it as, we've all got knowledge to give, but if we all shared that pool, we'd be much stronger for it, rather than try and hide these things. And I think finance industry is one. I think it's beginning to change. Creative is beginning to change. An older creative is probably used to doing brochures, and print and that sort of stuff. A younger is so used to web and online, and they don't know the disciplines of print because they've not been asked to do it. But now we're looking at environmental things and saying, your server's burning more energy than 1,000 pieces of paper being printed. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, have you thought about doing a campaign with print? Well, I don't actually know print. Well, why don't you have a chat to people that have been around there, and how do you do it sustainably and ethically and that kind of stuff? So I think there's this conversation that needs to happen with the generations, as you said, but with how do we do life more sustainably? How do we build legacy? How do we work together? And I think those are the things that are the most important, rather than like, oh, it's all their fault. No, it's all their fault. And it just it doesn't work. So some industries are generally older than others. But even in my world, like the creative industry, it's old. It's an old industry now. It's not necessarily new. And you get uncomfortable and go, oh, the metaverse. Oh, what the heck? Another canvas, we've got to learn and stuff like that, because things move so quickly. But in order for me to survive and thrive, it's like, well, how do I know that's in that world that could tell me about the metaverse, and what does it look like, and what are the opportunities that exist? So
yeah, I love all the generational differences. That it's quite fascinating to me, because I've always had an interest in psychology. My psychology A level was my favourite lesson.
Oh, okay.
And I guess that's probably what's brought me into an industry that is centered around people and understanding people. And the different generations is amazing. I think Gen Z get a really bad rep, which is probably undeserved. And I think they've grown up in a world which is so different to anything any other generation has ever known. I didn't get Facebook until my second year of university. And you had to have a university email address to have a Facebook account. They're growing up with that from as early as the age of 10 sometimes, with just that continuous distraction all the time, no sort of moment of peace, that constant need to please others. You're constantly being watched for the number of likes or comments you've got. It's difficult. And I think, the convenience culture that they've grown up in, where it's swipe left, swipe right, it's a delivery, a click of a button, everything is now. The human brain has not evolved quick enough to deal with that pace. No. And they're dealing with it whilst trying to develop their brain at the same time.
Yeah, so it's the pace to process. It's so quick. You don't have time to process. And what I'm enjoying in a roundabout way is watching millennials, because I'm just outside of millennial, only just.
I'm in that crew.
But what I'm enjoying is watching millennials going, these Gen Zs, because I watched it with Gen Xers doing the same.
So there's always something.
So you always see, it's like the generation, it's that lie where the generation that comes after is better than the generation before, and it's that constant tension. But we've got to learn to get on, and we've got to take time to understand, and I think for me, that's what's really important is, the Gen Zs coming through are always on. The
great thing about that generation is that they do want to make change, and that they are much more acutely aware of the damage that is happening to our planet than any other generation. So they are our future, and we have to work together in order to make it work. So,
well, they're asking questions. They're asking questions, and they're asking questions of the generation. Mm-hmm. I did see something this morning, though. Our paper straws?
Yeah.
Apparently they're worse from the environment than plastic ones.
Are you joking?
Yeah. So I was like, interesting.
They don't work either. Have you ever tried one of those kids' smoothies where you're trying to get the paper straw into it? It's a nightmare.
I'm actually quite... Yes, we can get rid of them because they just don't work. I know a guy that had a business that he come up with pasta straws.
Ah, okay.
So they were literally made of pasta, but they worked.
So just have a metal one in your backpack.
Yeah, that's it. Get metal straws all the way around. Well, Leo, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the sofa. Is there any way people can get hold of you, connect with you if they've got a need in their finance department or in their company or whatever? Where would they get hold of you?
Yeah, absolutely. LinkedIn's probably the best way. I'm always open to having conversations. So, reach out.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Leo.
Lovely. Cheers, Daryl.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to the Purpose People podcast. How you can help us is to like and subscribe our YouTube channel. You can also subscribe to our podcasts on Apple, Spotify, Google, and Amazon. That helps us get our message out there to help people go after their dreams, double down on it, and be successful in life on their terms.